It says starting recording. I think we started.
Wow, היא באושוויץ הייתה.
So, how did you become aware of this pageant, the Miss Holocaust Survivor?
Well, I sometimes read, occasionally I read this newspaper, Israeli newspaper online. It's called Haaretz. And in one of it's a left-wing Israeli online journal also that you can that I follow, and I found out about this pageant over there, and there were 4 or 5 pictures about it. It was the second year when they were making it, and the pictures were really strange and like disturbing, and I felt bad, but I also have like mixed feelings in certain ways. So this really was the starting point for me. Well, also I would like to also maybe give a bit more background. So I visited actually in Poland, Auschwitz and some other camps, Majdanek, and we were there with a survivor. And in my family, I have people who died in the Holocaust, which but it's an interesting position that I have, because I think they talk about second generation. I think it's like a third generation issue, where it's like you become a little bit as the time goes by, the memory starts to your relationship with the memory changes a little bit. So I felt conflicting feelings, which I'm sure like my parents wouldn't feel. I felt that it was, first of all, very, very strange. This idea of pageant is also just in itself is very problematic for me, as someone who lives in 2020 or 2016 at the time. But also what we make of this memory of the, of the Holocaust, because it was saying how it was about the, making the memory continue, but like, is everything okay to do that? Like, whatever we do to make it continue, is that like a good way to take this? And I'm in a generation where my kid will not know any survivors, will not have such a direct relationship with the Holocaust. So what's going to be that I'm passing to her about this this tragedy? So these were my feelings, of course, in a more complicated way at the time. I can explain them better now.
How did you gain the trust and the confidence of both the participant and the organizers of the pageant?
Well, first, after I've heard about this, so we went there for research, and I had a small camera, but we didn't go there with the camera right away. We contacted them. We said we wanted to do this film, but we just want to right now, get to know them. So we went there. We got to know the survivors in the retirement home. Some of them are not even related to this pageant. Some of them have been in this pageant. Some with bad feelings about the pageant, some with good feelings about the pageant. So it was like we approached them very gently, and we sat down, chatted with them. And also just, they see that obviously my name is Eytan, my producer is Réel. There is definitely, they understand that at least we know what a Holocaust survivor, mean, at least the emotional side of it, or traumatic side, I should say. So there was also this trust. And I have to say, they also don't really... it is somewhat controversial, but they don't really question what they're doing to the degree that I am. Like, even they were even fine with me talking with people who were not, happy about the pageant. It's for them, it's okay. It's like it's this microcosm, So that's kind of what it was.
the film poses a very specific challenge. You film at the same time survivors from the greatest tragedy of the 20th century, and at the same time you film also a very fine-tuned propaganda Zionistic machine. So how did you manage to keep your balance and or distance from these two conflicting points?
I think like what you are saying is definitely what made me want to do the film, because all this conflicting emotion for me, there is definitely this propaganda aspect to it with right-wing nationalism. But they also see themselves as like, genuinely helping these survivors. And some of the survivors seem, at least on the surface, to enjoy it. So then I start to ask myself, like, how do I what is my criticism, if at least on the surface, if everyone is happy, like, what is my even, do I even have a place in criticizing this? They've been through a lot, so this question was very interesting for me. And so what I did, I tried to approach this pageant without the lens of this, tabloid journalism, all this, spectacle. I know it's wonderful. I know there's like this happy big end with singing. I try to basically, let's say, slow time a little bit and really get into their rhythms, the rhythms of the survivors in the retirement home, which is very different from the spectacle. They have a very quiet life, which is in contrast. And I didn't want to also, trap them in this survivor identity and moralize them. So, for example, with Sophie, she isn't participating in this, she says, to honor her sister. But then she also says earlier that they participate in these activities only to support the retirement home. And then also she comes to the interview with all this jewelry. And then she says she doesn't want to talk about this traumatic event, but maybe there is a need in her to talk. Like, we don't know. So there are a lot of layers to her. And I didn't want to give the answer. I wanted to open up and for the audience, like this, to be curious about what she's going through, what she's feeling, which is really what empathy is. So I didn't want to give the answers, just arouse this kind of empathy and understanding towards her, why she would participate in a problematic, in an event that I see myself as problematic. And for the pageant itself, or the organizations around it, I was focusing a lot of the mundane details, and also, this surreal world, which it's like, with limos, with confettis. So I think these two, I was trying to put in contrast these two elements. And you're right, it's a very delicate thing. This was like a question I had to think about early on.
And at some point in the film, we see also American right-wing evangelists who come to Israel. And did you approach this, the fact that they are putting money into the contest, and on the other side of the ocean, they are supported by also anti-Semitic organizations and so on?
The relationship with anti-Semitism, I'm not sure this was there, but I definitely, for example, the joke with, for example, Trump that they make during the pageant to one of the contestants, I think for me it's not like a kind of a strange joke. It really opens up to all these implications. And this kind of, you see, this is a kind of a Islamophobia in there, when they are gathering. In this, they have a gathering before the competition in the film, about using Muslim names for the holy places in Jerusalem, in the United Nations. That was the issue around that time. This is not obviously my political position at all, but I really try to see it in more abstract terms. Like, yes, it is disturbing me because it's not my political position, but also, if it was left-wing propaganda, would I be okay with it? And then does that make everything fine? Just the politicization of it was like more interesting for me, I think.
So the last question, how long did you edit your material, and what kind of question did you ask yourself while you were doing it? Since you are also an editor, and we have in the festival another film that you worked on, the documentary about Mimaroglu.
This well, I have to say it's quite a long time actually. I edited the film. This was the competition in 2016, so you can imagine that I edited for quite a long time. In the meantime, I edited the Mimarolu documentary even. Yeah, for me, I edited a lot, and it was really hard to find this balance between and to get all these themes without, in a suggestive way. And I personally don't recommend the directors to edit their own film. And I wish I could work with someone also, but it's also the film is in Hebrew, and I live in Istanbul, and there's all this aspect as well. I don't know. Was there? Maybe I didn't answer.
No, you did. You
Oh,
did.
okay.
I want to ask you, what do you expect from what kind of reaction do you expect from a spectator, from a viewer when he watches the film?
Well, this is very important, obviously, for me. I mean, I wanted to be this meditative experience where, like, it's not like a black and white take on the subject, and hopefully it's layered. For example, for me, when I see, for example, the museum at the beginning with all the dolls, all the mannequin dolls, I think about how, well, I shouldn't be putting my answers, I guess, but like, I'm really interested in how the memory is transformed and deformed over time. I want really to people think about these issues, and there's the issue of the competition of pain is also interesting to me. It's in this case it's between survivors. There is this element where they have to pitch their story. They are made, let's say, to pitch their story in 2 or 3 phrases, and the jury, says, "Oh, Auschwitz, it's worse or it's bad." But in current day politics, also, if you think about this, for example, in Israel, with Palestinians having their own trauma, with Israelis having their own trauma, and there's all this discussion of who suffered more, and you did more, that we suffered more, and there's all these comparisons. For me, it extends to this area as well, and yeah, I think also the role of the evangelists here is important, because why the evangelists are there, because there is, I think, this question of Israeli state is not filling that void, so that someone else has to fill that void, and the survivors feel like they have to go along with this. So maybe this is something that we should also think about, and what we make of the memory, of course, for future generations.